Hey guys, I'm back again with another book review. This time it's going to be a review of Rat Salad by Paul Wilkinson. This is a book that I've read a few times myself, and I do hold it in quite high regard, and in fact I would go as far as to say that it has inspired me to kind of, as a writer myself, obviously, I write reviews for records, I write for a couple of websites, and essentially the way that he talks about how he wants to structure the review sections in this book of each album. He says he wants to avoid. He said at the beginning of the book he wants to avoid using cliche terms like, say, shredding or heavy to just describe the song, because it's kind of like a term that could mean that's really, really general. It's so he wants to be more specific, and I tried to carry that over into the way that I write reviews. So in a lot of ways, like I said, this is a book that's kind of inspired me, and obviously it's a book that I hold in high regard. Nonetheless, there's a few tiny things in the book that I think I need to sort of bring up and sort of bring into question, or sort of like criticize a little bit, because there are a few things that are kind of lacking in this book. But anyway, I'll get into it. Basically, this is written by, like I said, a guy called Paul Wilkinson. This is the first book he did. It was released about 10 years ago, I think. Let's see, it was released in 2006, 2007. And it's essentially, to sort of like talk about, it basically covers Black Sabbath from the years 1969 to 1975. Meaning that it covers everything from the Black Sabbath album up to Sabotage. Like I said, there's a lot of really good stuff in it. Like the way that it's structured is really, really good and makes it stand out from just being another book about Black Sabbath. Rather than sort of focusing more on the salacious side of the way the albums were recorded, stuff like drug use and all these weird stories surrounding the release of each of the given albums that are mentioned in the book. It kind of sort of breaks down the history going on in the world in between the releases of each album, and then sort of like talks about how they link into the album in their own way. So there'll be one chapter where it's about the social, political, and cultural history of what was going on in the world, and it sort of touches on stuff like the Kennedy assassination, Charles Manson, things like that, which is really kind of cool to see how stuff like that could have kind of leaked into the music. And then the album afterward, we'll be reviewing the album from that period. So like obviously from 1969 to 1970, it'll talk about the Summer of Love and stuff like that, and then it'll talk about the Blacks, and then it talks about the self-titled album. And I do like that, especially somebody who likes reading history myself. It's kind of cool to see how some music that you really, really, really like can kind of be inspired by events outside of the band. So it was kind of really cool. So that is a really cool thing that I do like about this book. The chapters where he breaks down the music on each record, like I said, I think if you don't know about music theory, it's just going to be right over your head. You are going to have no idea what's been said, because it talks about sort of chord progressions, changes of key, and there's a lot of very sort of technical terms that are used. And I think that's one of its failings, is you can write an album review that sort of like breaks it down on an intelligent kind of technical level without kind of straying into just being technical all the time. You can make it a bit more interesting. And those are pretty good things to sort of consider when you're reading the review parts of the book. It is pretty good as well, but it can get a little bit dry at points. It can get a little bit boring. There's a few things that are said throughout the book as well that do get on my nerves a little bit. Like right at the beginning of the book, a few pages in, this is on I think the second or third page, this is what he says this. He says, whilst I know, whilst knowing I caught dismissal on the grounds of sounding like a boring old fart, music really was so much better. There is no cogent counter-argument to this. And then later on in this particular section, he says, music today is not more vital, inventive, or relevant. That is merely a line we are spun by those with a vested interest in its marketing. Now, that kind of wound me up when I because really, with every degree of fairness, that does make you sound like some kind of grumpy old git. And just to kind of say, he makes a comment about basically about how leading up from like the formation of rock music with Elvis Presley and stuff like that, all the way through the 60s and up to like punk. Once punk kind of went, music stopped being good. Now I'm saying this as somebody who writes reviews myself and somebody who's a music fan and checks out music on a regular basis, that anybody who says that music is not good anymore is talking out their arse. Like, I think if you honestly believe that every single bit of music after a certain point is bad, you really are not checking out music, because I can basically go on to all these mediums like whatever, YouTube, Bandcamp, SoundCloud, and find a band that are really, really good and check out some really good records by really, really good bands. And to just dismiss everything after like 1978, 1979 as shit is a little bit limiting. You know, it's not the most intelligent argument. And yeah, so apart from that, really, that's one of the only things that really does irritate me about the book, is the fact that he makes a few sweeping statements, and he kind of there's a tiny bit of snootiness in that regard, like he does a bit towards the end or later on, where he talks about vinyl is better than CD, and it's kind of like a completely pointless argument. Obviously vinyl does sound, I think vinyl probably does sound better than CDs and stuff, but ultimately, if you want to buy a physical product, you know, people are going to buy it in whatever format they choose, whether it's a CD, cassette, or like a vinyl record. It's more or less making a few points that just kind of seem a little bit ridiculous at points, but other than that, it's a really, really, really good book. I definitely recommend buying it and reading it, especially if you want to kind of like get a deeper appreciation of Black Sabbath's music, because I think that's what I got out of it. When I first read it, I was recommended it by a mate of mine, and I read it, and then kind of went off, because obviously the way that the reviews were structured, I was like, I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about at that time, because I didn't have a very good knowledge of music theory. Started researching Black Sabbath songs, listening to the songs, and sort of really, really getting into them from that point onwards. So really, because of this book, I got more into Black Sabbath than I am as big a Black Sabbath fan as I am because of this book. But yeah, like I said, totally recommend it. And if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching, and have a great evening.